Oh, hi there. So in this video, we're going to do some practice with tax incidence, who pays the burden of a tax, and with calculating and knowing some tax information from a graph. Let's get started. Okay, so this first portion is just asking us about tax incidence, who pays the greater burden, and we're going to write more on the buyers, more on the sellers are equal. The government imposes a 20-cent tax on gas, and the prices rise from $3 to $3.10. That's the price that the consumer pays. Now, if I know that the consumer price went up by 10 cents, so the buyer price, right, the price the buyer paid, and I know that the tax was 20 cents, then I know that the other 10 cents was the seller price going down. So it's going to be an equal tax. Government imposes a per unit tax on cigarettes, which have relatively inelastic demand and relatively elastic supply. So that was the example from the lecture. This one, the cigarettes, we're going to say that the tax more falls on the buyers. Again, whoever's more elastic escapes the tax. Government imposes a per unit tax that reduces consumer surplus more than it reduces producer surplus. This is just another way of saying that the tax falls more on the buyers. And again, when we're saying tax incidence, tax burden, we're saying who's giving up more of their surplus. Last, government imposes per unit tax on soft drinks, which have relatively elastic demand and inelastic supply. Again, whoever's more elastic escapes the tax. So this one is going to fall more on the sellers. Now let's take a look at number 2. Assume that the government imposes an excise tax, which is just a per unit tax, it's a fancy name for it, on consumption of a good. The tax will have least impact on the market quantity for which of the following combinations. So in other words, which one's going to cause the quantity to change the least amount? And it's a little bit of a tricky question when you start thinking about it. Well, if we have a really elastic of the supply curve, for example, or an elastic demand curve, that's going to be pretty flat. And that means there's a lot of quantity response in response to a change in price. Even a small change in price, elastic demand and elastic supply tell us big change in quantity. And this is saying the least impact on the quantity. So it's actually going to be inelastic demand and inelastic supply. Because what would end up happening is you have a demand curve like that and a supply curve like that. And if they impose even a really big tax, it's going to shift that supply curve up to S tax. But you can see our quantity went from Q star to Q1, and I can barely even fit in the decrease in quantity because both of them are so inelastic. Number 3, following the imposition of a $4 per unit tax, the new consumer price is 9 and the new equilibrium quantity is 90. How much tax revenue was collected? Well, if we know that they sold 90 units, we multiply that by 4, 90 times 4 is $360. So this new consumer price is a red herring. We don't actually need that. We just need to know the $4 per unit times the 90. Government imposes a $4 per unit tax on the market at right. This picture here, calculate the following. So tax revenue. Well, we know that the per unit amounts of the tax is going to be up at this new supply curve because it's going to increase, right, by 4. So it's shifting this one up by 4. And so I know the per unit amount is 4. And I also know that now they're going to sell 100. So I would say 4 times 100 equals $400. And that's this box right here, right? That's our tax box. Now, deadweight loss. Well, that's going to be from here down and over. And so we do have 2 triangles here. The height of those 2 triangles is the same. So we have the height is 2, and then the base is 100. 2 times 100 divided by 2 is 100. And then the other triangle is also 100. So we have 200. Right? And so I did a little bit of math here, mental math, to be able to figure that one out. Consumer surplus. Well, the height of this triangle is 2, and the base is 100. 2 times 100 divided by half is 100. Again, I'm going to actually just write that. 10 minus 8 times 100 divided by 2, right? Because that's this one up here, consumer surplus. And then this one down here, producer surplus, is also going to be 100. But I'm going to write how we got it. 4 minus 2 times the 100 divided by 2. So 2 times 100 divided by 2 is obviously 100. Now, let's take a look at the bottom one. The letters represent points on the graph. So this is a little different, trickier. K, L, M, those are all points. Identify the following areas or prices using those points. So we're going to use the letters. Price paid after the tax. Well, that's going to be here, P5. And I'm going to zoom that in just a shade so you can kind of see what those look like. I can see them pretty well, but I don't know if you can. Price received by the sellers. Then we go down. That's going to be P2. How did I know that was P2? Well, the demand and supply, the original supply curve tells me what that price they're going to get to keep is, right? This is the new intercept. I go straight down from there, and that's going to tell me how much that tax is. So they get to keep P2. Quantity after the tax is going to be that Q1. The tax revenue is going to be from P5 down to P2. So we already got those two corners, over to J and then N. So again, I'm labeling just the outside corners of these boxes, right? It's the same process that we did up here. Deadweight loss, this one's pretty easy. JNL, you can do them in any order. That's fine. And consumer surplus, well, we go from P6 down to P5. And then what is that? J. And then last but not least, producer surplus is going to be P2, P1, because that's our last bottom part, to N. And that's how we figure out kind of using the letters in the graph. Hopefully this helped you understanding taxes just a little bit more. I'll see you next time.